Hello my dear learners, welcome to my channel. In this video series, we are learning Java programming language with practical demonstration. In the previous video, we learned about array index out of bounds exception and multiple try with multiple catch in one Java file. Now, in this video, we will learn about exception class, call a method from a try block, null pointer exception, and finally block practically. This is the third part of the exception handling. So, let's get started. This was the last program that we have done in our previous video. In that, we will having multiple try block in one Java file and multiple catch block for one try. I have monitored the code written as a two try block in the one file. You can write that also in the one Java file. You can write multiple try block, and for one try block you will have the multiple catch block. So try block is used to monitor the code, and the catch we can write the name of the exception which you want to handle in the catch block, and we can write multiple catch in one try block also. Means if you have written a try block, so you can have a multiple catch block for the one try block, and in one Java file you will have a multiple try block also. So this is what the very interesting concept that we have discussed in our previous video. Here we have covered array index out of bounds exception, number format exceptions, and arithmetic exception. So in that previous video we have covered this topic. Here we have I have written try block over here. For the one try block, there are two catch block I have written in the code, array index out of bounds exception and a number format exception. So that try block will use to monitor your code, and that if there are any exception occurred in the try block, then that exception will be handled by the catch block. So in these lines, say for example on line number 6, we have written integer.parseInt. So if these line getting an exception, at that time two catch block we have written, first for the array index out of bounds exception and second for the number format exception. So if these two exceptions are occurred in line number 6, that exception will be handled by the catch block. So say for example we are getting the input value from the user in this code, and if user enters a character value that is not converted into the integer value, at that time the exception will be handled. And on line number 14, what we have done, we have done a divide b, means any we have b equal to 0 and a equal to 20, so there will be a arithmetic exception will occur, and that exception will be handled by the catch block written on the line number 15. We have written arithmetic exception AE is the object that we have created for the exception. So if there is an exception occur on line number 14, that exception, if the exception is arithmetic exception, so that exception can be handled by the catch block written on the line number 15, catch arithmetic exception. So this is what we have done with our previous video. In this video, we will discuss about exception class, call a method from the try block, and null pointer exception, and finally block. So in this video we will cover total 4 topics practically with a demonstration. So if there is an exception occurred on line number 16, if the exception is array index out of bound exception, then we have printed on the console at least one argument is required. If user do not enter any argument, then line number 8 will be executed. So say for example, if user enter a character value and then we have converted that character string value into the integer, but it is not possible, at that time the number format exception will be occurred, and that exception will be catched by line number 9, and then we have printed on the console, please enter numeric value, right? So in this program we are getting a value from the user, and in the previous video we have tested with all the possible values in for this program. So you can see my previous video also, so you will have the proper idea what is the what is the input, and for the particular input what will be the output in our program, at what point the exception will be generated, and if the exception is generated, then which exception is generated and we have handled by the catch block. And if the arithmetic exception is generated, because we have written a divide b over there, so if arithmetic exception is generated, at that time line number 16 will be executed, and we have written on the console cannot divide by 0. So we have handled all the possible exceptions that may occur as per the user input at the end. Then we have handled the exceptions. So I am copying this code and paste it in the new file. I am saving the file with exception demo4.java, okay, and I am changing the class name exception demo4. I am copying the class name and I am just changing some line of code over here. Say for example, I have removed this line and pasted it over here. Say for example, now in our try block there are two sentences, right? First a divide b, and then we are passing the string value to the integer value on line number 7. So if user enters any value, that will be passed into the integer, okay, and at that time if any exception will be generated, that exception will be handled by the catch block. So I am removing these from here, and I am removing that try block also. So you can see now, you can see in the code we have one try. In that try we have two two executable statements, and then we have returned three catch block for one try block. So if line number 6 will occur an exception, that exception will be handled by the particular catch block. And if line number 17, if line number 6 will executed, and if the exception is generated on line number 6, at that time the particular catch block will be used to handle the array index out of bounds exception and a number format exception. So that number format exception will be generated if user enter any string value, and string value cannot be converted into the integer. On the line number 7, we have written system.out.println a divide b. A equal to 20 and b equal to 0 we have, right? So if the exception will occur on the line number 7, that exception will be handled by the catch block we have written like as arithmetic exception. So what is the point over here is, if line number 6 will generate an exception, line number 7 will not be executed, because your execution cursor will goes to the catch block and it will never comes back into the try block. That can be possible by calling a method that I will give you the demonstration in the same video. But for now, in this code, if the execution cursor will goes to the catch block, it will not move to the try block. If the line number 6 will get an exception, and the exception will be handled by the catch block, execution cursor will not move back to the try block on this line of code. Here we have written three exceptions: carry index out of bounds exception, number format exception, and arithmetic exception. But arithmetic exception will be generated on the line number 7. As per this code, you can say the line number 7 will not be executed if the line number 6 will generate an exception. Okay, so keep this point in your mind also. There is also a very interesting concept to understand. So if the execution cursor will move on to the catch block, so it will not move back to your try block. It is possible via calling a method that I will give you the demonstration in this video also. But for now, you can see in this code there are three exceptions we have handled: system.out.println. Now I am writing over here system.out.println. Say for example, I will write over here where we can say this is the end of our main. So I will write end of main over here. So this is also a very interesting concept. If line number 6 will executed, and if the number format exception will be handled in the catch block, if line number 7 will be executed, at that time, if any exception will be occurred, so that exception will be catched by the arithmetic exception, array index out of bound, arithmetic, and a number. This is what we have written, a end of main over here. So that end of main, this line of statement on line number 15 will be executed at any point, because if the exception is generated at that time also, that point will be executed. I am just changing the font size of my CMD for the proper output. So I will move to the my directory location. Say for example, I have saved the file in the D drive. I will go to the Java folder and then I will go to the exception folder. Here I am compiling the file javac exception demo 4.java. When I am pressing enter, it is compiled successfully. Now I am running the file java exception demo 4. Say for example, I am providing a value to my program from the via CMD. Say for example, I am providing the value as, so if I will provide any value from here, this value will goes to the string argument that is written in the public static void main. Okay, so if I will not provide any value, so there is an error message, error at least one argument is required, and we are getting end of main also. So as you can see over here, the exception is generated on the line number 6. Okay, and then that exception will be catched by the line number 8 array index out of bounds exception, and we will have the output at least one argument required. So that try block is executed, catch block is executed, and then on the line number 15 end of main will is executed over here. Now I am running the file with a value, say for example 5. So that 5 will goes to the argument, it will convert it into integer stored into b, and then a divide b means 20 divide 5 means 4. Now I am changing the value as an input value. I am giving the input as, say for example, C over here. So here we are getting a message, please enter numeric value. Okay, and then if I will go to I will enter the value, say for example space is not any numeric or character value. So at that time you can see what will be the output when I am pressing an enter over here, and you can see end of main will be executed every time. So if the catch block is executed at that time also, the line number 15 end of main is executed. So here we will have the output at least one argument is required. Okay, so now I will go to the 0, so that 0 will be stored in the B, and we will have the exception, and we in the output we have written cannot divide by 0 at end of main. So if these three exception is generated at that time, this line number 15 is executed every time, right? Because it is not written in the try block and any catch block over here. So if try block will generate an exception, that exception will be handled by the catch block. And after all the catch block, we have written the statement, say for example end of main. So that statement will be executed at any point of exception. I am copying the code and giving you the another demonstration. So I am just copying this code. I hope you are understanding the point. I am saving the file. Say for example, this is our fifth demonstration, exception demo 5.java. In this code we have written end of main on line number 15. And here I am just changing the file class name exception demo 5. Some code will be the same for this program. Now what I will write catch block over here. Say for example, so in this program there are three catch blocks. These three catch block we have written in this program. We have handled the exceptions that may be occurred at the time of the execution. Okay, so that three catch will be executed. There are a point also, if one catch will be executed at that time, can any other catch block will be executed? I am just giving the question to you guys. If one catch is executed, so remaining catch can be executed. So what do you think, right? So you just write a comment for me. I am just giving you a question to you guys. if one catch will be executed, so the remaining catch can be executed or not. So please give me your answer in the comment box. So here we have written array index out of bounds exception, if and number format exception and arithmetic exception. So we have handled these three exceptions over here. So now there is another class named as exception class that I have told you in the exception part 1, right? We have covered some theory points on the exception handling part 1. In that video you can see there is a class named as exception, and exception class is a super class of every exception. At that time also I told you. So please understand this concept that we have handled three exceptions over here, but these three exception is a child class of the exception class. So I will write another catch over here with exception E. Okay, so exception is a class, is a super class of every exception class. So say for example, what will happen over here? I will write over here system.out.println any other exception. So I have written any other exception over here, right? So if any exception will be generated in the catch try block, that exception will be handled by the catch block that we have written on line number 8, exception E. So assume this code, as you can see, if any exception will be generated, that will be handled by this exception class. So remaining catch cannot be executed at any point of time. At any point of execution, remaining catch cannot be executed because you have handled all the exception on line number 8, right? This is also a very most important point about the exception handling. So if any exception is generated in the try block, that is handled by the exception class. I am just saving the file. So what the point is, the remaining catch cannot be executed in this code because we have handled all the exception over here. So if line number 6 will generate an exception or line number 7 will generate an exception, that exception will be handled by the exception class, by the catch. Okay, so this line of catch, these statements of catch block will not be executed at any point of time as per this program because we have handled all the exception on the line number 8. So the remaining exception cannot be executed in this program. So this is also a very important point. See, if line number 6 will generate an exception, it will handled by this exception class. If line number 7 will generate an exception, this exception will be handled by the exception class. Okay, so the remaining catch block will not be executed at any point of time as per this program. So now I am compiling the file javac exception demo 5.java. Okay, I am getting an error. Say for example, exception array index out of bounds has already been caught. Exception number format exception has already been caught. Exception arithmetic exception already been caught. You can see in the error, we are getting an error over here because this line of statement will not be executed any point of time. That is why Java is giving us the error. These three exception is already caught on the line number 8. So this is the remaining catch will not be executed. That is why the Java is giving us the error. These three exception is already has been caught in the exception catch as an exception. So this line of code, I am just removing these from here and I will write this exception catch over here at the last of all the catch. So now you can understand the concept why I need to write the exception at the last, because if that catch we will write on the before this exception, it will give us the error because arithmetic exception, number format exception, array index out of bounds exception. If this line of code cannot be executed, at that time the exception class can handle all the exception except these three exception. So if any other exception will be generated, at that time that exception class will be exception catch will be executed. So I am compiling again. So it is compiled successfully. So there are no any error in this code. After all the particular catch we have written the catch exception class. So that is why we have written this exception as a last, because if these three exception will not be generated by the system, if any other exception will be generated at that time, that catch on line number 14 will be executed. As you can see, I have selected the code. This code will be executed if and only if these three exception will not be generated. So I am compiling the file. I am running the file now with a particular input value. Say for example Java exception demo 5 with input value. So I am testing this code with every possible input value. Okay, so without any value we will have at least one argument is required. With 0 we will have cannot divide by 0. With the MCI value we please enter numeric value only, and with the space value also you can check at least one argument is required, and end of main. So that end of main we are getting the end of main in the output every time. Okay, but there's any other exception is not executed as per our input. As you can see on the line number 6 and 7 we have handled all the exceptions: array index out of bounds exception, number format exception, arithmetic exception. So that catch block is not executing as per our input. Now I am copying and paste it over in the new file. This is exception demo 6. So now I am giving you the exception demo 6. What I am doing is I am just creating a method. Say for example void display over here. Okay, this is the exception demo 6. So I am saving the file exception demo 6 dot java, and in that I have created a display method. Okay, so in the display method I will write display method called. Okay, so when we will call this method, this statement will be on the console output, right? So if the line number this try block will executed, at that time we will call a method. Say for example, so from try block you can call a method also. From here we will write exception demo 6 d equal to new exception demo 6. I am creating an object for the particular class, and I will call a method d dot disp. That method is called on line number 14. Now I am compiling the file exception demo 6.java. Enter. Okay, there is an error, illegal start of expression. Okay, let me see what I have done wrong in my code. There is an error on line number 4. Okay, that is what we have created a method in the main method. So I need to write before the main method. Now I am saving the file. So that void display method I have written before the main method. Now I am compiling the file, compile successfully. Now I am going to run the file java exception demo 6 with all the values. Say for example with the value 5. So that 5 will goes into the B. Okay, and then 20 divided by 5, and then we have created an object, and then we have called a method display method. Okay, so that exception will not be generated as per this input. Let's say for example now I am providing the input value 5. So what will be the output? You can give in the comment box what is the output for the exception demo 6. Okay, yes, you can say there is a for display method called and end of main. So there is no any exception is generated as per this input. So that display method we have created a, say for example now I am giving a null over here exception demo 6 d equal to null. The object has a null value now, so the null pointer exception can be generated. I am just telling you that the d is an object with a null value, so there is a possibility that a null pointer exception will be generated. But for now, as you can see, we are calling a display method, and now compiling the file. Now I am running the file with a value, say for example the input value with 4. Now you can see in the output the 4 is there in the output, but there is a return statement. Any other exception are also in the output, and then we are getting an exception. Null pointer exception cannot invoke because local 3 is null. We are getting a 4 because 20 divided by 5 means 4. Now we are assigning the null to the object and we are calling a method. So that exception is generated and cursor is moved to the any other exception, because your exception class is now in the context. Okay, so it is executing now and we are getting a null pointer exception and we have printed E over here. So I will change into the code for the proper output. Now I am compiling the file, running the file. We are getting an exception, say for example any other exception. What is the exception? The exception is null pointer exception over here, because we have assigned null to our object and after that we are calling a method by that object, with which have the null values. That is why we are getting a null pointer exception over here. And they have written cannot invoke exception demo 6 dot display method because local 3 is null. So that D is a null, we cannot use that object, right? So I am just changing the code, removing the proper exception over here. So I am compiling the file, I am running the file again. Say for example Java exception demo 6, compiling successfully. Now I am running the file. So you can test this code with every possible values and you will have the different output for every input value. And we have executing the null pointer exceptions over here. So here I will write the any other exception with the proper outputs. Now I am saving the file. Here I have written any other exception. If the exception is generated, any other exception is generated, at that time this catch block will be executed. Okay, so I am just saving the file. I am going to run the file, say for example Java exception demo 6 with the input value 5. As you can assume the output, as you can compile this code in your mind, this is what you can understand. We are getting for any other exception and end of main. So first of all I will compile the file, I will run the file now. As an input with a 5 we are getting 4 as an output, and then any other exception and then end of main. So with the value 0 as an input value 0, what we will have in the output? Can you guess the output? As per this program, what will be the output? Cannot divide by 0 and end of main. Okay. So if we are providing a MCA value in the string argument in this program, at that time what will be the output? You can guess the output and write it in the comment box. What will the output? Please enter numeric value only and end of main. So with the value space, so I am providing a space value as an input. At that time you can guess an output, at least one argument is required and end of main. There is no any null pointer exception in this program. We have handled that null pointer exception in the catch block with the exception class. So exception class is a super class of every exception class. So any exception can be handled by the exception class. And why we have written at the last, that is also I have discussed you in the previous program. Now I am copying the code, paste it into the new file. Say for example exception demo 7. This is exception demo 7. I am saving the file exception demo 7.java. And all the code will be the same from the last program. Here I will write a finally. Okay, so finally is also a block for the exception handling, and in the finally block I will write system.out.println. Here say for example here I will write finally block will execute always if the exception is occurred, if the exception is not occurred, if the catch block is executed, if the exception class is executed, at any point of time the finally block will be execute always. That is why I have written finally block will execute always. So it execute always, and then here what in this system.out.println I have written end of main. So you can write over here also after a try block. So you will have the proper idea of the program execution. So as you can see in this code, we have written a finally block after the catch block. Okay. So that finally block will be executed every time, and that end of main is also can be executed every time. as per this line of code. So now I am compiling the file java c exception demo 7.java compiled successfully. Now I am running the file with Java exception demo 7, Java exception demo 7 with a particular input value, say for example 0. So that 0 will be goes to the string argument as an input value from the CMD, and then the exception will occur, cannot divide by 0, finally block will execute always, and end of main also. I will execute with every possible input. I am executing with a string value as a Java. So that exception will occur on line number 6. Number format exception. Please enter numeric value only, finally block, and then end of main. So I am entering the 5 value over here. As an input I am providing 5. So at that time there are no any exception will be generated, and the finally block will be executed and end of main will be executed. When I am pressing an enter, as you can see, for finally block and end of main. So this is what keep this practice if you are working on the any program, any Java program. So please make sure that you can test your code with every possible input value. So now I am providing an input value as a space over here, say for example with no any value, so that exception will be generated, array index out of bounds exception, and we are getting an output, at least one argument is required, finally block and end of main. So this is what the sequence we are getting into the output. So that finally block is the block which execute always. Here you can have the multiple statement also. Say for example finally block execute always statement 1 2 3 4, that can be also possible. So I am just removing that statement, it was just for your information. So I am just writing multiple finally block over here. This is also important point for the exception handling. Can we write multiple finally block for the one try? And can we have a multiple try in the one file? If yes, then can we have a multiple finally for multiple try block? This is also a very important question. So this is not important question. You can have it. You can do the practical. You can check by yourself. And if you have any query, you can comment me. I will give you the answer. Now I am copying the code, paste it into the new file. This is the 8th program, exception demo 8.java. I am saving the file, exception demo 8.java, and what I will do over here is I will write system.exit. So that system.exit over here can be executed as a exception will be generated. That exception will be catch into the exception, and then finally block will be executed. So here the finally is block which execute always unless there is a abnormal termination or system.exit. If there is a abnormal termination or system.exit, the finally block execute always unless there is a abnormal termination or system.exit. So for these line, the finally block will not be executed because we have written system.exit over here. So your program will be terminated over from the system.exit. So if your program is executed system.exit, at that time finally block will not be executed. So keep this point in your mind also. Final is the block which executes always unless there is abnormal termination or system.exit. So this line of statement I am just removing these. Okay, so now what I am doing is I am just converting all the input value into the integer value, and then we have written system.exit, and this catch I will remove because the arithmetic exception will not be generated in this code. So that exception we have written over here, that is also I am removing for the understanding purpose, and the number format exception also I am removing that. So the array index out of bounds exception will generate if there is an no input value from the user. So I am just checking that if the finally block is executed in for this line of code or not. If user, I am compiling the file java c exception demo 8.java. Now I am running the file with a particular value java exception demo 8, and we are input as a 0. So that 0 will goes to the B, and then we have written system.exit on the line number 7. So if the system.exit is executed, So finally block will not be executed. We can write try without catch or finally block also, but either catch or final is required in try. So this is also a very good concept for the exception handling. See, as you can see in the output, there is no any exception is generated. So when I am providing a space value over here, it means that array index out of bounds exception is generated. But we need to check, is the finally block is executed? Yes, it is executed definitely. Because if the exception is generated, so your execution cursor is gone to the catch block, at that time finally block will be executed. Okay. So if the system.exit is executed, at that time finally block will not be executed, and if the exception is generated that is handled by the catch block, for this program the finally block will be executed. As per the user input, I am giving you one point over here. We can write try without catch or finally. We can write try without catch or finally, but either catch or finally is required in a try. So you have to write one catch or one finally block if you are writing a try block. So I am running the file with a string value, say for example MCA, that MCA will goes into the argument, and it is not possible to convert into the integer. At that time exception will be generated, but we do not have handled that kind of exception, that finally block will be executed and that end of main. So as you can see, finally block is executed and a number format exception is generated for input a string value. String value cannot be converted, but the finally block will execute always, because the exception is generated but the finally block is executed. So over here also we have done with the finally block. So that's all from my side in this video. In the next video we will learn about try without catch and finally, and interrupted exception with practical demonstration. So stay tuned to my channel, like, share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you guys.